Okay, we're on.
Perfect.
Going to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
and justice for all. Okay, we're going to call the public hearing meeting to order, and we will, can I get a motion to open up the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? No one? We're here.
So at the table, for those that are here this evening, there's two sign-up sheets. One is for any questions or concerns about the public hearing that we're in, and the second one is the public comment section for the regular board meeting. So if anyone has any, wants to make any statements after the presentation or has any questions, feel free to sign up on the form. I will also tell you at the conclusion of the presentation, I do have about 28 questions that were submitted internally at the school district that I'll read and answer. And I want to just encourage people that are watching this live that if you do have questions that come up, you could always email the school district, call our office at 647-0100, and we will answer any questions or concerns that you might have. So to begin with, again, this is a public hearing. We're discussing a grade reconfiguration plan, which would take effect September 1st of 2021, starting with the 2021-2022 school year. So the current, if we can go to the next slide, the current configuration of the school district is that we have 3 schools on the campus. The grades are configured K5, 6-8, and 9-12. And just for a point of reference, 5th grade was initially in the middle school and was moved down to the elementary school back in 2012. The next slide indicates the proposed changes to redistribute the grades 6 through 8, where grade 6 would go to the elementary school, and we would now have the Ellenville Junior Senior High School that would service all of our students grades 7 through 12. And that's what the next slide shows, what after the configuration, what the buildings would look like. All 3 physical plants will remain open. We will just have 2 beds codes or registrations with the State Education Department for 2 schools. So the next slide talks about the rationale and benefits for the reconfiguration. One of the significant considerations has been the steady decline in enrollment over the last 21 years. Our Beds Day enrollment in October 2000, the school district had 2,065 students. The Beds Day enrollment this past October 2021, we have 1,564 students. That's about 500 students less, almost a building, and that's a 24% decrease. Now, none of that is shocking in that school districts are required to have enrollment projections done every year, and the enrollment projections that we have shared with the board and the community over the years has shown that there was a projected decrease. And I want to also say that Ellenville is not alone. The enrollment in public schools, including in Ulster County, have decreased significantly over the last 20 years. So what are the improved instructional experiences? Grade 6 shifts back to an elementary model, allowing for more time in core subject areas. We have the elimination of the grade 6 academic workshop period and elimination of period by period transition. Additional opportunities for grade 6 students to focus on social emotional learning. One of the things we talked about at the last budget workshop is restoring positions in the areas of mental health and social emotional support down in the elementary school. We will have, well, the elementary school right now has a daily scheduled intervention time that those 6th grade students will be able to partake in. And the alignment of the K-12 curriculum. The district is now exploring a K-6 ELA and math program and other initiatives on an ongoing basis. In grades 7 and 8, next year there'll be expanded opportunities in math, science, language other than English, and electives. That's going to be a long-term improvement, but we will see some short-term gains next year in foreign language for our 8th grade students, and our 8th grade accelerated students who now are participating in living environment and algebra will be able to participate in foreign language, but they're also having a 7-12 master schedule. They might be able to accelerate in earth science or a different course of their choice, depending upon what their strengths are and the programs that can be put together for that. 7-12 master schedule. Shared staff will allow us to explore expanding our current course offerings, especially as we have more and more retirements, and additional opportunities for collaboration within the 7-12 grade level certifications and departments. The next slide, what will happen to the middle school building? K-6 students may continue to use designated areas of the building as needed for special area classes and lunch periods. Students in grades 7 and 8 will remain in designated areas of the building for most of their courses. So one of the questions were that schools that have gone back to this model are the students separated in their areas for 7th and 8th, or are they mingling with the high school? We will have 7th and 8th grade students in the middle school plant, the existing middle school plant, along with the P-TECH program. Other vacant space will be used for the Ellenville P-TECH Academy. Just a couple of comments on that. I know Kelly White did a presentation some months back on P-TECH. I know Mr. Spinelli has something scheduled for the faculty meeting in the middle school. And we can, I'm not sure, Mrs. White, if we have that presentation posted on the website, but we'll make sure that is, if there's any questions. There's some misinformation out there that P-TECH is a program where students in 8th grade can apply to join the P-TECH. It's open for all students. And it is a 6-year program, 9 through plus 2 years of college. But starting in 10th and 11th grade, students start transitioning over to Ulster County Community College. So we will not have in that building, 14-year-olds with 19-year-olds. It's not going to happen. Those students in P-TECH will be spending those last few years on the campus of Ulster County Community College. I'll say it now. There was a question about this and some other information. This is not a BOCES program. This is an Ellenville Central School District program that the school district won a grant for $2.5 million to have a school within a school. So we are modeling and working with BOCES because they have a P-TECH program, but we're also looking at the program in Newburgh, which is a school within a school. So we'll get support from BOCES, but the staff is our staff and it's our program, and we'll be housed in that 7th and 8th grade building along with the 7th and 8th grade students. And as I said earlier, those students will have opportunities to participate in coursework up in the high school, as we see fit. So this is just a snapshot. The Ellenville Elementary School, incoming staff from the middle school, 6th grade teachers. There'll be support staff such as a psychologist and ENL teacher. Additional staff recommendations that we've made in the budget is mental health professional and student support positions, instructional positions, classroom and special areas. So I know in the elementary school, we've asked for an additional music teacher so that we can have 5th and 6th grade band and additional art. There will still be shared staff between the two buildings, like the nurse, who will still spend some of the time for 7 and 8 in P-TECH, but will be able to spend a good portion of her workday down in the elementary school. And I want to say that over the years, because we're 3 schools on one campus, whether it's the teaching staff, the support staff, the administrators, there's a lot of sharing and a lot of collegiality and support. So I just want to say that, we're still on one campus. It's not like one school's closing and students have to be dispersed into other communities. The Ellenville Junior Senior High School, incoming staff from the middle school So the principal, Mr. Spinelli's here today, has been doing a great job getting the P-TECH program launched along with Mrs. White and Mr. Pabon. Will be assigned to P-TECH, but he'll also be supporting the other buildings, especially the high school. But as I said earlier, the principals all work together and support each other. Grade 7 and 8 teachers will become part of the Ellenville Junior Senior High School, along with the high school teachers, the assistant principal and the school counselor. Additional staff recommendations, again, additional mental health professionals and student support positions and instructional positions for sure that we've recommended would be a foreign language teacher and an additional social studies teacher next year. Which leaves me to questions and comments. So if anybody here has any questions or comments, please sign in. But I'm going to start with the questions and the Q&A that I have in writing. So the first question, number 1, will clubs and activities be merged? All of our students will have opportunities to continue to participate in clubs and activities. We'll be looking at the staffing and the participation numbers, as we always do as we get closer to the new year. Will the Learning Center be shared? So the Learning Center is a center that's used for students that might have testing accommodations or need additional support in accordance to some plans they have. And right now, we're not sure that we'll be sharing them, but I can tell you that those students will have those accommodations, whether it's in a shared learning center or 2 learning centers that are one learning center that's split between the buildings, but that will be determined as we complete our master schedules. Can we create a mentoring program that follows students from 7th to 12th grade? We think that's a great idea that we're going to explore. Will department heads be in charge of 7th and 8th grade too? Those are discussions that are going to continue to happen. In the past, when we were a junior senior high school, the core subject areas, math, science, social studies, and English, grades 7 and 8, did fall under one department. Can we have a special education department head? So this year, the board created and we appointed a special ed coordinator, and we're considering more coordination services. That coordinator is K-12, but there was discussion about maybe breaking it up into a K-6 and 7-12. So we do have some additional special education support this year. Will grade 7-12, number 6, will grade 7-12 have the same grading policies? So not necessarily. These are often, grading policies are left in the hands of the teachers, and they're often specific to the courses and the classes being taught. Currently, there's no universal grading policy. However, teachers may collaborate on a department level for grading policies. So it's really left in the teacher's hands, and parents and students get those grading policies when they get their syllabi for the beginning of the school year. Will grades 7 and 8 now follow the 9-12 calendar? For example, the region stays off and other districts follow. So right now, we'll be following, as we do now, we'll be following the requirements of the State Education Department with regard to the school calendar, what students can be in and what students cannot be in during Regents level classes, and those days off. So there'll be more information that follows. Number 8, when will staff be notified of the moves and the locations they're moving to? So we'll formally notify the staff as soon as practicable. The master schedules are in the process of being developed, and we have some contractual requirements that we have to follow. So as soon as we can notify people finally on their assignments for next year, that'll be done in accordance with the contract. How will lunches look? Will we utilize cafeteria space in other buildings? So yes, initially we will be utilizing the middle school cafeteria for some elementary. They can't hear me? Am I not talking into this? I'm sorry. I'm hearing myself, so I can't, but thank you. So I was at lunch, right? I was at number 9. The existing middle school cafeteria will be utilized by the elementary school until the new cafeteria is built. Remember, part of the capital project is that we'll be building a more spacious cafeteria, but we will have some classes and some students that will still have lunch probably in the middle school, but we're still looking at those schedules. How will specials be handled in the elementary school now that there are 5 to 6 more classes will be added? So last year, if you remember, due to class sizes and some budgetary issues, we reduced the use of about 5 classrooms down in the elementary school. So 5 or 6 classrooms added on is easily done. And those classes, we have provided specials in our buildings with some support over the years of space in the middle school for the same number of classrooms that we'll have down in the elementary school this year. This next question has to do with the elementary school library. Elementary library was already reduced to a half a year when we were not virtual. The library time for the students in the elementary school was reduced as a result of an additional special stream being added. This year, stream no longer was being offered and libraries been reverted back to the full year. Number 12. Why will the K-6 building only have 2 administrators when the 7-12 building will have 4? So for the 21-22 budget, we're proposing additional mental health student support positions for the elementary school. Those discussions have been happening for a while with the administrators. And when we talk about needs assessments, what do you need? What's the best resource that you want? Everybody advocated for more mental health, especially the elementary school. So we'll remain with 2 administrators down there. In the middle school, as I mentioned earlier, the PTEC program is required to have its own principal. That position is funded by the PTEC grant. Mr. Spinelli will also support the whole 7-12 population with Mr. Pabon. And right now we're working in the we're working through designating and distributing responsibilities of the 4 administrators that will be responsible for 7 through 12. But I really do want to add that principals and the APs work very collaboratively, and when somebody needs help, all they have to do is call, and people are very responsive to supporting each other in the buildings. Number 13, will the elementary utilize space in the middle school for special area classes? At this time, we're planning on using space in the middle school for special area classes when necessary, as we've done before. There was a comment in that question about increasing transit time to and from specials and decreasing time for instruction. We do that now, and it has had a minimal or nominal impact on time in transit. Number 14, at the end of an already stressful year, how will time be given to teachers who need to pack? Teachers will be provided time to pack and support of the buildings and ground staff. Number 15, when we had a junior senior high school years ago, there was JV and varsity sports. Will modified sports be eliminated? If so, where will the money then that paid for modified coaches go instead? There is no plan to reduce sports. So we will have modified teams, we will have JV teams, and we have varsity teams. One of the things we'll continue to have discussions about are our numbers, because with a declining enrollment, if the enrollment projections, and we're seeing this across all of the Mahal schools. There's schools that can't field modified JV and varsity anymore because there's not enough players, and the enrollment in the schools has impacted that. But there is no plan to eliminate modified sports right now, or at any time. That's not on the radar here. What will the impact be on the music program? What will band and chorus look like with the expansion of the elementary school? We plan on having 5th and 6th grade band and chorus. Number 17, specifically, what enrichment programs will be available to students in grade 7-12? What will be available to high-achieving students who are not necessarily interested in the PTEC program? So, right now we're offering college classes, AP classes. We are planning on those to continue. In addition, currently we offer, as I said earlier, grade 8 students the opportunity to take Algebra 1 and Living Environment as accelerated classes, and there might be opportunities for them to accelerate in different areas. We will continue to explore other courses and electives. We're adding a social studies teacher back and a foreign language teacher back, and we're looking to see how that might initially expand electives. But we will continue to look for opportunities to have more. By having 7-12 teachers under one master schedule, we can merge the grade 8 accelerated students with the grade 9 students, creating opportunities for new courses. The P-TECH program is not designed to serve, quote, high-achieving students. However, the program is available to anybody that wants to apply for it. So if students, they're not going to be denied access to it, but the program and the grant was written for those students that, the priority for those students that are at risk. But there are students that can apply. All students in 8th grade can apply. Number 18, how will extracurricular activities, yearbook, student council be handled in grades 7 through 12 now? Will positions like the middle school yearbook, middle school student council be eliminated? So we'll be reviewing these clubs on a case-by-case basis. We'll be reviewing them with regard to participation, grade level participation, and we'll have more information as we continue to plan for the upcoming school year. 19, what exactly does consolidation of staff mean? How many positions will we lose, or will we be adding staff as the letter we received says? So tune into the budget workshops. We are planning on adding staff. We talked about that at the last meeting. We're still evaluating our staffing and program needs across the area. So I'm not sure exactly what will look like when we get to the adoption of the budget, but we are planning on adding staff. And if we don't need positions necessarily in a particular area, we will look at that. Number 20, does this mean that pre-K is now removed from the district indefinitely? So currently, we do not have a plan to restore pre-K. We understand and appreciate that the pre-K program is important, but when at the time the program was discontinued last year, if you remember, enrollment was down significantly, and attendance, even for those students that were enrolled, attendance was low. So that program is funded by a pre-K grant. It was on the budget for $186,000. I want to clarify, and we'll be clarifying some questions that came up about this. That money was not received this year. We did not apply for the grant. It was part of the budget to not have pre-K, so that money was not received. So we did not get that. And we also we were also advised that the state education department took a stronger stand on 10% of the $186,000 having to be allocated to groups that are eligible pre-K programs and apply through an RFP for those funds. And last year we did have, I believe, Head Start inquired about receiving those grants. Right now there is no plan to restore the pre-K program. The grant was for $186,000, and the cost of the teachers and the TAs that were employed in that program, correct me if I'm wrong, Vince, but it was like well over $300,000 for the program. So the district was paying in kind to support the program for about $120,000 based on the employees that were working there at the time. Next question. Will we have a media center in the former middle school? Will the library clerk be kept? The media center in the middle school will remain in place. The library clerk position will be maintained. They will work closely with the elementary and high school librarians. 22, how will the nurses and health offices be distributed and utilized? We'll continue to maintain the support of a nurse in the existing middle school building for 7th and 8th and P-TECH. And as I said earlier, that nurse will definitely be shared with the elementary school and spend more time supporting the elementary school students. 23, who will be in charge of hiring additional teachers? Will BOCES, or do we lose that choice? So I think this goes back to P-TECH again. And really the district, we are not relinquishing any of our responsibilities, our authorities to educate our children to BOCES. We're not outsourcing our programs. We're not doing that. We do utilize BOCES for services, as most school districts do, and will continue to do that. But we are in charge of our own hiring process. The district will be hiring 2 additional teachers with the P-TECH grant. We're in the process of setting up those interviews now. They will be employees of the district, not BOCES. And again, the P-TECH program is an Ellenville program. It is not a BOCES program. 24, how are the students selected for P-TECH? How is the program being presented to the students? Are students with IEPs and 504s included in the program? Yes, students, all 8th grade students that are interested are invited to apply. Students are selected for P-TECH through an application process. Parents and students will be invited to a virtual open house to learn about the program. That information will be forthcoming very shortly. Number 25, will students be allowed to walk between the buildings during the school day? Student schedules will determine what areas of the buildings they should be in, as they are now. Number 26, will there be a plan in writing that we can refer to? I'm not sure about what the plan is. We have this information that'll go up. We'll continue to answer questions, but the plans will be the plans of the elementary school and the plans of the Ellenville Junior Senior High School. We'll be hiring an additional English, history, science teachers. So there will be 3 of each, like there is in math for the junior high building. So we will always be looking at staffing levels, and when we can increase opportunities, we will. There's a proposed addition of a social studies teacher and a foreign language teacher in the 2021 draft budget. The last question, number 28, how will this impact the health office regarding the volume of students seen each day, medications administered, the state health requirements? Will there be staffing considerations regarding this increase in student volume? We'll need to continue to maintain support of a nurse in the existing middle school building for grades 7, 8, and P-TECH. There'll be some support there. Could come from the high school. We'll be working out schedules for that. There will be additional nursing support shared with the elementary school. Those are the 28 questions.
Superintendent, we have 2 questions that have been chatted in. I shall read them to you if you'd like.
That would be great.
Can 10th graders take P-TECH programs?
10th graders cannot just opt in for P-TECH classes. We have a initial class that'll start, so it's going to gradually grow. So eventually 10th graders can. The initial program will start with 9th grade, and it will be 8th graders that start. The current 8th grade, there'll be 20 to 25 students that can start in that P-TECH program. So 10th graders cannot start in the inaugural class. It's for starting with 9th grade. The following year, when those 9th graders become 10th graders, obviously they'll be participating in it, but it's not open for 10th graders to begin.
What would an 11th grader's schedule look like?
So that's a very good question, and I don't know. I think it depends upon what the student wants to take, what track they're on. If they're accelerated students and they want to take, and they've already taken algebra, geometry, and trig, they could take calculus, they could advance in college classes. So I can't answer what a 11th grade schedule would look like. I think that's customized to each individual student in the district.
Final question. How will this affect an 11th grader?
How will it affect 11th grader? So I think an 11th grader is one of our students in the school, and I'm not sure there's going to be an impact on an 11th grader here. They'll still be offered the same opportunities that they have right now.
No more questions.
Any other questions this evening?
Any questions from the public that's here this evening? Any questions from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing. So moved. Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Public hearing is adjourned. Okay, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the February 9th, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Willie? Good, okay. And the motion passes. So we go on to public forum for this evening?
I didn't do that. He was busy.
There was an added motion, if you board members can refresh their screens. There is no one for public forum for this evening. We'll now go on to budget presentations for this evening. I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mr. Napoli.
Thank you. Tonight's format is going to be the same as last week's format. Tonight we are reviewing the building level budgets as well as athletics and district-wide curriculum and instruction. What I have done on the agenda, which I didn't do last week, but it will continue for future board presentations. In the agenda, I've referenced what number in board docs. You can, if you want to refer to something, for example, the elementary school is board docs 5.5. So if you'd like to follow along electronically, you can jump right to that part in board docs. As in the past with future budget workshops, the presentations and the documents will be online later this week, as well as the presentations. There will be a public comment form available online if anyone has any questions about any of the presentations tonight. And if there are any questions, I will answer them and present them to the board at the next budget workshop. Athletics. Mr. Moore, I don't think those numbers are right. And that's not Mr. Moyer's fault. For some reason this PowerPoint is not correct. So the athletics budget is up 4.49%. And I'm going to have Mr. Moyer step up to the podium, which is over by the superintendent, so he can talk about the items because he's got a lot of things that he's going to talk about. And while he's doing that, I'm going to jump down and check to make sure that the PowerPoint for the other departments are correct. And it looks like Mr. Spinelli's is correct. So I don't know why athletics is not. So Mr. Moyer, if you could head on over to the podium because you have a lot to talk about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Napoli. Thank you, Board of Education and Superintendent Wiles. Mr. Napoli, does the board have a copy of the sheet, the draft that I gave to you, so they can look along at the budget lines?
They do, and they should look at the summary document, the budget summary, and embedded right in there on number 3 is everything that Mr. Moyer is going to be talking about, but it's going to be on paper for you.
All right, thank you. So the first topic on the summary sheet is the biggest increase in one of our budget lines is for district-wide athletic equipment. The biggest purchase that we're looking to make for the next school year will be for a pole vault landing system or pole vault mat. That's going to be roughly between $15,000 and $20,000. Those are my initial quotes. So that takes up the bulk of the increase from last year's budget line to this year's line. That's why there's a $10,000 increase. Also looking to continue to purchase and upgrade our gyms by getting new wall mats. If we can work that in, I'd really like to see that happen for the high school gym especially, and maybe the middle school. The other thing is we need to continue to add soccer goals to our inventory, if you will, as they continue to age out. We need another new soccer goal and possibly an indoor portable goal. That was the biggest one. There's some other minor increases there as I go through it. You can see I asked for some slight increases in chaperones, scorekeepers, and timekeepers. And I put that information in there just because I was thinking there might be some slight increases in their stipends and what they get paid when they participate and support game management. Another big increase as you move down is the ROIA, Regional Office of Interscholastic Athletics, went up by $1,125, and that was a budget increase for all school districts based on our school size. And for us, and here in Ellenville, a Class B school, all Class B schools saw an increase to pay for their administrative costs, so it's $1,125. The equipment repair went up again $2,000. Again, there's increased costs for the reconditioning, and also would like to have some additional fund to get our fitness room when we're back in action, get it on a yearly routine-based schedule for maintenance and upgrades if needed to support the fitness equipment in the weight room. Some other increases include costs for our increase in the awards and sports banquet. Again, we're going to have a new venue to go to for our athletic banquet this year. Again, I'm not really sure what those costs will be. I do know that the White Wolf is now up and running again. It's a different business.
mill.
What is it?
The paper mill.
Okay, it's the paper mill, and I have yet to contact them to talk about, what that will look like for us, and hopefully we will have a return of our banquet this June. Coaches clinics and everything, continue to really support our coaches. They do a great job. We want to give them opportunities for professional development. This year, due to COVID, there hasn't been any requests, and it's very difficult for them to do any PD, so we really haven't spent any money in that area, but the increase there would be to pay for travel and hotel if they choose to go to an in-person conference. The rest is some slight increases there, and again, looking in the uniform line across the three lines, two of those lines remain flat. I increased one. We'll be looking to get new track and field uniforms across both programs, so that could be a big increase there when we're looking to buy uniforms for both boys and girls track and field for both our indoor and our outdoor seasons. So I think that touches upon many of the increases, some significant, some rather slight. Overall, Mr. Napoli, do you have a question?
No, I don't have any questions, but
Okay.
the board can look at document 5.3 in board docs to look at those individual line items if you need to dive into it a little further.
Mr. Napoli, where is the, where do we absorb the increase expense, which we will have, again, for PPE equipment? I know it was significant this year. Where's that going to be for next year?
If we have PPE, that will come out of various line items that might have a surplus in them. So basically that would come out of fund balance. Usually comes out of a buildings and grounds budget line item or health and safety in Mr. Moyer's department.
Is that going to be an unanticipated expense, or are we going to anticipate an expense in that line?
I anticipate some, but right now we're not purchasing anything for next year because I don't know what that's going to look like. So I don't want to load up on PPE. We do have some now. We've got a pretty good inventory. We were anticipating having a lot more students come back this year than we have. So we have plenty of masks, we have plenty of gloves, we have plenty of cleaning supplies. So we might not need as much next year that we've purchased this year, but I won't know until September gets here.
We'll take a look at the lines and make sure there's money allocated there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Wayne?
Thank you, Mr. Moyer.
You're welcome.
Where do we stand with some kind of a athletic shed and a scoreboard for Leipold Field? You know, our soccer teams have been very successful over the past 10 years. And I think that, I know, not in the near future with spectators, but we should be able to see the scores down there and how much time is left. And
Right, so I'm still in the research phase and can look at the portable scoreboard because there's no electric out there. So I'm still in that mode of getting that information, and we can do that. Mr. Napoli, can I defer to you on the shed, question about the shed, please?
Sure. So we looked into a shed like we have for the tennis courts that we have out back. We're concerned that there's aren't any cameras over there, and those sheds are easily vandalized and broken into. So, and to go ahead and put a permanent structure out there would require a project being approved by state aid. It would have to be engineered. So there would be a big expense associated with that. And to put something out there like a shipping container, I just think might not look very nice.
I
Thank you,
think we
John.
should contact the Little League and ask how many vandalisms they've had over the past 10 years or so. Maybe it's a lot, maybe it's not, I don't know. But I don't think that it's okay that coaches are taking bags of soccer balls and paint the line of field that could actually damage their car and flags that can, puncture holes in their seats, when we can get a shed for a couple of $1,000s.
No,
So I'd like us to look into it.
Yeah, I can certainly look into that. Not a problem. We do have vehicles that the coaches can use. We've got buses out back. If they don't want to use their own personal vehicle, they're welcome to use, a bus that we have.
John?
Yeah, with all due respect, I think that our varsity and JV soccer teams that play over there deserve a shed and deserve a scoreboard. And I don't see any reason. I understand the bureaucracy of the state, but I think it's time we start planning to put a cinder block shed or something over there with metal doors that the coaches can use. You can get cameras fairly cheaply that can be remotely used. And I think we just need to start moving in that direction to show some support for our coaches and our kids. So I'd like to start to take a look at possibly considering that in this budget to get something going, because it has been a lot of years that they've asked.
We can certainly spend some more time looking into it, and we can get you some costs that'll be associated with that.
With all due respect, I don't want to spend a lot of more time doing it. I think we should make a move towards doing it, as Wayne said.
But
Understood.
we've been asking for a couple of years, and Red Hook or Rhinebeck, I don't remember what school it was, they have a portable scoreboard. Let's give them a call and see where they got it from, see what the cost is, and, and just my opinion.
I think it was Rhinebeck, you said, Mr. Story, and yes, I have called them, and I can revisit that and look for that. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that, hearing from what the board has to say, Vince, I think we need to take a look at getting some estimates sooner than later and seeing what's entailed in getting that up and running.
I mean, we have the architects, if we have to go that route, but there might be a different route. We can ask, the architect, construction manager, what they think.
Sure.
Take a look at that. Any other questions for Mr. Moyer? John?
Mr. Moore, I just want to say congratulations on your efforts to maintain and improve the athletic program. I also I don't know how we keep the costs down when the section and the state, and those groups continue to raise the prices. But I did recently take a walk through the gym, and it's just a noticeable difference. So I just want to congratulate you and the coaches on your efforts for maintaining and improving our program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burns, Trustee Burns, and the board, and thank you for letting us, continue that work. And it was with your support we were able to make that happen. So thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Moyer? If not, thank you, Mr. Moyer.
Thank you, President Matrician. Thank you.
5.4 in board docs is curriculum and instruction. If you take a look at that budget, it's up considerably. It's like $260,000. And when you take a look at the details, you'll see that the majority of that expense is due to the addition or the re-addition of summer school and summer school transportation. If you remember this year, it was not in the budget in anticipation of everything that we went through. We're hoping that we can have summer school next year and including Boost. So that's where almost all those expenses are coming from. If you have any questions about that, Ms. White would be happy to field any questions regarding curriculum and instruction.
Anybody for curriculum and instruction? John?
I usually like to give kudos to all the administrators that manage to stay within their budget. So I don't know how I'm going to turn an 84% increase into a positive, but I will say this. I think the efforts that you've made to provide additional training for our staff and to keep them up to snuff on all of the newest technology and improvements, I think that's well worth it. And so kudos to you as well. But don't come back with an 84% increase next year.
This- Superintendent just whispered over that it was driven by summer school.
Okay,
And no other questions from curriculum and instruction? Willie, Iris? Okay.
The building principals, they are here in the audience. They've done a great job holding the line on their budgets. I would say, I'm going to generalize, they're all pretty much close to zero. They have moved some monies around to adjust for needs in various departments. So I'll just jump through line by line. In the elementary school, line 5, somehow last year we left in $250 for dues and publications for pre-K. That has been removed for next year. Lines 21, 31, and 41. Consumable workbooks for grades K, first and second, $500 for each. Building-wide discretionary materials and supplies, as well as contractual supplies, is down $900. That's driven by the number of staff that are in the building. And one thing that I've noted in the elementary school and the middle school, while we haven't figured out what the grade reconfiguration looks like, moving the 6th grade down to the elementary school, how the funds are going to follow that grade level, but we'll be working on that in the future just so that the budgets will accurately reflect what those dollars look like. When we move staff down, the discretionary numbers will follow the staff, and that's something that's in the teachers' collective bargaining agreement. The middle school, language arts, there's materials and supplies increase.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Napoli, can I ask a question on that? So will we know before we get through the budget on that move from 6th grade down and how it will affect the budget?
That is the plan. So the total dollars of the overall budget is not going to change, but the dollars by building will be shifted.
Okay.
So as soon as we have the resolution approving the grade configuration, we'll start parceling this out over the next month.
Thank
So
you.
the last reiteration of the budget you'll vote on to put up for the vote will include that.
In the middle school, language arts, materials and supplies, there's an increase on line 9 for $600. Math, lines 19 and 21, that's materials and supplies and consumable workbooks. You can see Mr. Spinelli just moved it from one line to another, so $1,450 has been moved or reallocated. Social studies, you can see he moved $600 from dues and publications to consumable workbooks. And science, there is a big increase of $2,000 for consumable workbooks. He can answer that question if you have a specific question on what those workbooks are going to look like. And then testing in the Student Support Services Department, there's a decrease of $1,000, and we've realized over the last couple of years that we haven't needed those dollars in that line item, so we've right-sized that line item in the budget.
And that covers elementary and middle, you said?
That's elementary and middle school, correct?
Okay. Any questions for elementary? Our principal is here, Mrs. Nicole I. There she is right there. Welcome. You did a great job, keeping the expenditures down and reallocating your funds, and I know you're looking forward to this upcoming new venture with us. Any questions for Mrs. I? Thank you, Mrs. I. Mr. Spinelli is here as well. Mr. Spinelli, can you stand up so we can? Anybody have any questions for the middle school? Are all I just have one question about textbooks. Are we all up to date on textbooks? We have the current textbooks that we need for all the different.
So I just want to make a comment that, and I'll defer to Mrs. White on this, and Mrs. I and Mr. Spinelli, we are looking at a new textbook adoption for literacy and math eventually. We're not sure we'll get both of them done, but the focus is on literacy now, so I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that.
What I can share right now is we are going to be exploring different programs. Nicole, Ms. I has been in contact with some publishing companies to get some samples, which will have the staff do a review of programs one at a time rather than having 2 or 3 programs to look at the same time. So right now we're in the process of gathering some resources, materials from Houghton Mifflin, and the teachers will have the opportunity to review them and participate in a demo to see their the online component portion of their program, and give us some feedback and make a decision, what our next steps would be. So we'll be continuing with that process over the next several weeks until we find a program that meets our needs.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions for Mrs. I or Mr. Spinelli? Mrs. I, do you want to speak to the literacy?
Yeah, you can come up.
Good evening. Just to piggyback a little bit on what Mrs. White just said, actually, Mrs. Matarazzi, assistant principal, and myself got to do a demo with Houghton Mifflin yesterday in the afternoon. We were very impressed with the program, so looking forward to rolling out for our teachers for K-6 to see some new programs and really get an idea of what else is out there and their hands-on programs. I know moving forward with all the virtual world we are in right now, it's really nice to see some of the companies and how quickly they've adapted also into our changing world and the new platforms that are out there. And I think I'm excited too in the building to see a K-6 program where every program is building upon each other. It's the same vocabulary and the same context, the same materials being used. Will be nice for the children also to move forward. And, you know, working with Kelly Ms. White has been great just to really see our programs flourish and move forward and to see where our students will end up being. So the reading is exciting for us just to have everybody on the same page. So as Mrs. White said, we're going to do a few different companies and we're going to do one at a time, set up a demo, let them ask questions, set up all the materials in the gym. K-6, I'm working on getting all the materials so that they can actually physically hold everything, see everything, flip through pages, and really be able to dive into questions that they may have.
Is the reason you're looking into a new program, is there one that stands out of what's happening with the Super Kids program in comparison to the reading programs you're looking at?
So I just think the continuation of having one program. Right now we have a K2 program and then the 3-5 program, which is the one of the older versions of HMH, which is the Houghton Mifflin. It doesn't connect, and it kind of just second grade drops off, and there's no pickup. So there's no, continuation of the program.
Thank you. John?
Ms. I guess with this COVID pandemic, there needs to be even a greater emphasis on literacy since our kids have probably fallen behind, and we know elementary is the key to those kids. Is that one of the reasons we're looking at different programs too?
Definitely, and I think there's a lot of different maybe intervention programs that come along with some of these new programs that'll be very beneficial to our kids at this point.
And I just wanted to again give kudos to you and Mr. Spinelli for holding the line. Did the superintendent give you an opportunity to revise your budget after seeing Mrs. White's?
She did not, but we could speak to her tomorrow about that.
Thank you. Good.
Mr. Burns, I just want to add to the initiatives that we are doing with literacy under the school improvement grant, which was our application was approved and we have funding for. We will be working with instructional coaches specifically on literacy and math and doing pretty deep needs assessment in terms of the impact that COVID has had on our students' literacy skills and working to build whatever they need whatever support they need to start closing those gaps.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. I?
Can you call Mr. Spinelli up? He wants to make a comment about science.
Sure. Thank you, Mrs. I. Mr.
Thank you.
Spinelli, could you come up and talk about science?
Sorry.
Thank you. Just wanted to remind the board and public that the cost for the consumable workbooks underneath science last year was anticipated. We mentioned that last year that we would have to re-up the consumables once every 3 years. So it's a once every 3 year cost that'll be taken care of in this budget season.
Any questions for Mr. Spinelli? Thank you, Mr. Spinelli. Go ahead, Mr. Napoli.
So I'll head into high school now. Mr. Rabone is likewise with the other two building principals. His budget is actually down $200. He's moving money around, so you see a slight increase in language arts, line 10 for textbooks, math, line 20 for textbooks, Line 31, social studies, workbooks, business education technology, since that's really a technology-driven department, there's not a lot of use for consumable workbooks, so you'll see the $1,500 being removed from that. Health, dues and publications, there's a slight increase in the cost of those items. In PE, we noticed that the materials and supplies line item has not been spent over the past couple of years, so we were able to shave some money from that. I think Mr. Moyer takes care of a lot of those needs out of his athletics budget. The media center, likewise following suit, line 130 for books and periodicals. Student support, we've seen an increase in need for materials and supplies. That's line 139. And that's overall, like I said, a budget down $200.
Did that 200 go over to Mrs. White's budget to bring it down to 83%? Anybody have any questions for Mr. Pavone?
Yes, I have one. I think that we may have, what is our present staffing in the business department?
We don't have a business department right now. Mr. Pabon, do you want to talk about that? We had an opening, and it's very hard to find certified business teachers. So I believe we don't have that. We focused on technology. We have a technology teacher.
Will we be looking to get back into that? I know at one point we had 2 teachers, and I know the number of courses that were offered were solid. And
Yes.
I think we're neglecting a segment of the student population by not having it.
I'm not going to speak for you, Mr. Pabon, but I think it is it is a focus he'd like to return to. Do you want to speak about it?
It's also a nice sequence for some students.
Yes. I think it's really been the staffing that's been a difficult,
Good evening, Board. Thank you for this opportunity. Totally agree with the importance of business and financial literacy. Right now, due to the lack of certified candidates, we've posted for 2 consecutive years and successfully contacted universities that have the programs for business certifications. We have attempted to merge within our technology, incorporating financial literacy. So what we have within our intro to programming are segments and information on Bitcoins and financial literacy of managing the new financial ecosystem that exists now in our new world. But we want to continue to look for the opportunity to offer business classes because we do see their value. Right now, it's just been a bit challenging finding a candidate. The last one we had, fortunately, moved out of state.
Questions for Mr. Pavone? No? Thank you, Mr. Pavone.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the administrators for coming. You don't have to stay. You can head on to your respective homes, and thank you very much and be safe.
They're running.
Yours, Mr. Napoli.
Thank you. I was asked to provide an enrollment study. So there's one in there that's board docs number 5.8. I put in the last 10 years on the superintendent's presentation regarding the grade reconfiguration. You saw that there was a 24% decrease, and I kind of illustrated that over the past 10 years. The tax cap has been submitted. The actual document from the state's website, from the OSC's website, Officer of the State Comptroller, that's on 5.11. And the next budget workshop is along with the next board meeting, which is on March 9th. And don't forget, or please remember that it's at 7 o'clock. When we combine the budget workshops and the school board meetings, it's at 7 o'clock on those nights. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Napoli? Mr. Burns.
Mr. Napoli, I'm looking at the 10-year drop, and I know it's the same across all 4 counties. I think there might be one school in Western Sullivan County that had a slight increase, but everybody else is dropping. Without getting ourselves in trouble here, if this trend continues, we could be looking at making some decisions on some of our programs and sports and staffing in the next 4 or 5 years.
No, I'll let the superintendent answer that question, but every year I do provide an enrollment projection study, and I'm remembering somewhere in the back of my head, within the next 5 or 8 years, we're going to be down to like 1,300 students. But, once I get that updated from the company we work with, I will put that in one of my board reports.
That was a very slick handoff to the superintendent on that question.
So I can answer that. So we will always look year to year on what those numbers are and the resources. Sometimes we have retirements coming up, so that's the way really if we have, I hate to say too many resources, because really sometimes that's the way to also build more capacity in your programs and offer more electives to the students, but that has to be looked at annually to see where we are. And I'm hoping that something levels out here in the state and we can maintain what we have, but if we continue, we will have to continue to look at it.
And going beyond that 10-year period back to 2010 and 11, then you say at one point we were over 2,000 students?
In the year 2000, so 10 years before that, when I first came in 1997, we had about 2,100 students in the district, and we're down to about 1,560. And it's a steep decrease. If you think about 500 students, that's the number of students in our high school right now. So it's significant. But I know Onteora, there's other schools, they've closed schools. Even in this area, there's a lot of consolidation going down. I think people are just moving out of the state right now, and the number of public school students that we have in our districts is definitely decreasing.
Jody?
I think we also don't want to jump into anything. I think with COVID, you're going to possibly see where we might stabilize or even increase. There's a lot of people who have moved up here
Yes.
with children, and they've actually are still remote with their schools that they're in the city or in Westchester or other locations. So hopefully we'll see maybe an increase or at least level off at some point.
We're always hopeful,
Anybody else? Any questions for Mr. Navlin? If not, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Navlin. We'll move on to reports, information, and/or correspondences. For myself, I'd just like to point out, I know Mrs. Wiles is going to cover the snow days and the significant snow days that have been used for like an impromptu winter break, I guess you would call it. But I just want to say that, there's a lot of banter out there back and forth about the calls and, and listen, we all empathize. We know that the students are missing some valuable instructional time. It's not going unheard. The superintendent she has a very difficult task when she makes this decision at 5 o'clock or 4:30 in the morning when she's up weighing all the factors. And I just want to point out that fully support her in the tough decisions. I rib her a lot about it, but it's a tough decision. She has to take into account the staff, the students, parents and people and everything. And when she weighs this decision, it's not an easy decision. You may wake up in the morning and as we saw yesterday, everything was fine. The roads were clear. There was no soul in sight. So of course, she was the bad guy until when the school would have been dismissing at 12:15. That's when the students would have been on the road. That's when conditions got icy. That's when in the police, from the law enforcement side, we saw numerous accidents, cars off the road. And, that's a decision that was tough, but it was the right decision. And we realized there were a lot of them used, and she's going to speak to that in a few minutes. I just want to say that fully support your decisions, Mrs. Wiles. We know you have a tough job there, and we know you take a lot of criticism both ways, back and forth, but you also have a lot of support as well on that. So, any other board members? Okay. If not, we'll move on to Superintendent, Mrs. Wiles.
So just to dovetail on that, I've been calling snow days for about 17 years now, and I was mentored well about these decisions, and I spend a lot of time looking at forecasts, speaking to the highway department, our transportation department, but I'll stand by my claim that I'd rather make up a day of school than have a bus go off a road and children get hurt or worse than that. We can always make a day up. And I know it's a huge inconvenience for parents. And I know especially during this COVID, crisis and this pandemic, it's especially hard because the students in cohort A have missed more in-person instruction than the students in cohort B. But it's really, I don't remember a year where we've had 7 snow days in 3 weeks. and the weather pattern is crazy, and we're just going to have to get through it like we have to get through this pandemic. But it's always going to be safety first of the students and the staff. And I, apologize for the inconvenience, but I'm not going to sell out the safety. And yesterday could have been a bust. Yesterday it was terrible at 12 o'clock when the little ones would have been going home, but it wasn't. So, it's a crystal ball. You put a lot into the forecasting. One of my colleagues said, we make good decisions based on bad forecasts. So, and I think Mr. Matrician said it's the only profession you could have, being a forecaster, be wrong a good portion of the time, and
Still keep your job.
keep your job. So anyway, it's been a difficult year in many ways, but let me talk about the snow days. So when we developed the 2021 calendar, it included a minimum number of days that we had to be in attendance and a maximum number of days. The minimum number is prescribed by state ed is 180 days. The maximum number is 183 days. We always schedule more than the maximum, and those are the snow days. So this year we scheduled 192 days, which left us anywhere from 9 to 12 days. We've used 9. We have 3 additional snow days left. So I know there's a cry that let's move to remote instruction. We don't have to do that yet because we still have 3 additional days to get to the 180. In addition to that, when you move to remote instruction, and why there are school districts that don't have any more days yet, and they have what they call pivot or transition to remote instruction. But we have some teachers in our district that, even with some support of hotspots, they are in areas where the internet service is so spotty that they could not provide live synchronous instruction to the students. So you can have an inequity where you have some students getting live instruction and some students not getting live instruction. And we can't have that. And we've been trying to figure out a way to make that more equitable and get teachers. We could normally open a building, but on a bad snow day or a flood day or whatever it is, or no electric, they're not going to be able to come to the building that day. So the plan is use the 3 days. Hopefully we won't have to. And then we're going to see where we are. If we can't resolve that issue, we'll probably look to, like we always do, to the spring break. But I'm really hoping we have 3 weeks, right? 3 or 4 weeks to get to that. And the next week looks clear. And we're just going to take this week by week, day by day, kind of like we've been doing for the whole year. So there'll be a letter posted to our website on how we're going to proceed, but we do have 3 additional days left. The next thing I want to share is that the 3 buildings, starting with the elementary school, is looking at increasing in-person attendance. Still based on the social distancing rules of 6 feet and the other guidelines, but there have been more students that have opted out of coming in person. So we're trying to see if we can, we are planning on consolidating cohort A and B to the best that we can and having students come both weeks if it works. We just want to make sure that everyone has that opportunity if they so choose to. So Mrs. I is working on having that happen. It's already happening for our special ed students, and I think it's starting next week for our ENL students. I also want to share that today the governor signed another executive order, and there'll be a survey going out to our staff. We are now required to survey the staff and find out if they've been vaccinated. That information, not the names of the students, the teachers, or the staff, has to be reported in numbers to the state, to that Department of Health. So that if you hear about that, that's what's happening. And we also have to report the percentage of teachers that are instructing in person, instructing our students in person. And for us, that's our staff, because our staff is in person for the most part. Today, there was also, and I put this letter in from the Department of Education, the feds. The government's announced that they will not grant blanket waivers with regard to state assessments. So it appears that, and we don't have the details of this yet, but it's in the news and you should know about it, that we will have to provide the grades 3 through 8 assessments and possibly some Regents exams, but they said, the Fed said that, but we have to wait for the clear direction of the New York State Education Department. But it's not going to be like last year where those assessments get canceled. They're giving us a lot of flexibility on when we can give them, if we can give them with fidelity at home. So there'll be more information in the next couple of weeks, but the federal government has not granted a waiver to cancel those assessments this year. So more information to follow on that. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wiles. We'll move on to Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mr. Napoli.
Thank you. In my board report, the staff, well, in my report, there's a memo from our attorneys regarding gender-neutral bathrooms. Going forward, beginning in March, any bathroom that's a single stall will be identified as a gender-neutral bathroom. It will no longer be male or females or boys or girls. And we're going to use the terminology gender-neutral faculty or staff along that lines. Bathrooms like the nurse's office, they've always been just gender neutral anyway because it's available to anybody in the nurse's office. In addition, I've been working with our financial advisor for our 5-year financial plan. The data should be ready soon. I've included in here our strategic financial plan, which is basically an action plan on items that we address and need to address every year regarding the finances of the district. It's there for the board to review. I'll post it up on the website when the time comes. That's all I have to report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Napoli. Move on. Oh, Mr. Burns.
Are we going to use existing bathrooms for this, Mr. Napoli? You moved. I was looking for you over there. Are we going to have existing bathrooms? Are there smaller bathrooms in the three? We'd have to have one in each building at least, I'm assuming?
No, any bathroom that's single stall has to be gender neutral. So that really impacts the faculty and staff bathrooms. We've got 2 bathrooms in elementary school that are right outside the library that the pre-K used years ago that are, one has a urinal and a stall. I'd have to look at that one, but that could be identified as gender neutral. But usually this impacts the faculty and staff bathroom. So it can't say men's faculty or women's faculty. It has to say gender neutral faculty. So we're not going to be adding any more bathrooms. We'll be, the existing ones will become gender neutral.
What, do we have to designate for students as well?
No, students, the student bathrooms right now are all multi-stall, so that can
Right.
remain boys and girls.
Okay, and I'm sure the governor sent money down to achieve all of these unfunded mandates that he continues to send down.
As always.
Mrs. Ramirez.
So do we not have gender-neutral student bathrooms?
We don't have single stall bathrooms in our buildings. We have multiple stall bathrooms. But if we have made accommodations, when asked if someone needed to use a gender neutral area or bathroom.
There are gender neutral bathrooms. For example, the kindergarten wing in the classroom, there's one toilet in there.
Right.
It's for anybody who wants to go in. The nurses' offices are the same way. So we've got a couple classrooms who really don't use the bathrooms anymore, but there's a couple classrooms on the second floor of the high school where there's a bathroom in there, but it's not labeled as anything. It's available to whoever's in the room, but we don't use them anymore. Some of them, the plumbing has actually been turned off because it's more of an inconvenience than to use the ones that are in the hallways.
So we don't have a gender-neutral student bathroom in kind of the general area.
I'm just thinking, I just texted Mr. Napoli, I think that we have 2 bathrooms down in the cafeteria wing, but we'll have to look at that. There's 2 bathrooms by the high school cafeteria that I think are single stall, but we'll look at. And they might be double stall, but I think they're single.
Yeah,
We'll take a look at it and report back to you.
Right.
So I just have one more follow-up question. Does a faculty, are students not permitted to use like a faculty bathroom? What is the
Correct.
delineation?
Correct.
Even if it's single stall?
That's correct.
And why is that?
They're locked for the faculty to use with a district issued key. Students have their own bathrooms to use, so we do delineate between faculty and staff bathrooms and student bathrooms.
Is that a requirement? Like, is there anything that would prohibit us from just having single-stall bathrooms that any person who needs to use the bathroom can enter and use?
I can certainly look into that. I don't know how easy that would be for our security staff to manage,
More bathrooms.
more bathrooms and students going into a faculty bathroom. I don't know that there's a requirement to have a difference, but I'll find out and I'll let you know. That's a good question.
I
I
would
think it
certainly
might-
hope that the
I have-
union would fight that.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I do think it's in the code, in the building codes, but we'll pull it out.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Napoli. Move on to Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, Mrs. Kelly White.
So as noted in my board report, the school improvement grant was approved last week. That was for $100,000, and that's used to carry out the activities in the district improvement plan and the activities that will be created for the middle school's improvement plan, which we're currently working on and will present upon completion. Additionally, we have interviews coming up for our P-TECH vacancies for our English and math teachers, and we're going to be doing our second round interviews for our social worker position next week as well, and we're in the process of coordinating interviews for the school counselor vacancy and teaching assistant vacancies. And just an update on activities going on within the school and community for Black History Month. Our librarians have been pushing out resources for the teachers to use in the classroom, which has been very helpful. Ulster BOCES has also provided a pretty comprehensive list for teachers to draw upon that have lesson plans and other items that they could use in their classrooms during Black History Month. We also have ongoing right now the annual NAACP Black History Month contest. The deadline for that is coming up on February 26th. And for those you listening at home, the contest is open to all students, K through 12. And this year's theme is on the Harlem Renaissance. And there was criteria provided to the principals, which was shared with the teachers. But students can submit a writing project, art, music, or an activism project, which will be reviewed by the NAACP. And there are monetary awards for the students outlined in the contest rules that were provided. Additionally, the high school's My Brother's Keeper program, their ambassador group, is in the process of creating an anthology that they want to put together to include original writings from both students and community members. And if anyone is interested in contributing to that, they can contact Mr. Mulhern. He's our assistant principal at the high school at the moment for any questions that they have on submitting to the anthology that they're putting together.
Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. White. We'll move on to personnel resolutions for this evening. Our first resolution, rather lengthy, it's on high-risk sports, 7.1. Whereas,
To save you the trouble of reading that, I do have a point of information though here, Mr. President. But did we edit this? There's modified sports on this.
yeah, we need to amend the resolution. That's where I was.
So I'd
gonna
like
go.
to make a motion unless we need a motion to discuss it first and second, I'm not sure.
I need it to go on the floor to modify.
Okay, I make a motion to bring it on the floor.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, now you can move to modify.
Okay, I make a motion to modify that we take out anything that talks about modified sports or JV sports, if I'm correct. Everything we approve are going to approve is varsity.
That's correct.
So to change it to say varsity football, volleyball varsity, and then the other two would be taken out.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Mrs. Little?
Yes.
Mr. Story?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez? Mr. Bruce?
Yes.
Mrs. Freeman?
She's muted.
She's muted. Yeah, she's muted. Thought she said yes.
I think she did, but you're muted.
You're muted, Iris.
I see. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Reverend Collins?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So the district will participate in the high-risk sports that have been identified. Move on to 7.2.
Motion
I believe
to
we're going to be in the
accept.
same situation. I'll
Motion.
entertain a motion to bring it to the floor.
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. You want to make a modification, Mr. Burns?
Yes, sir. Motion to, I believe this is the same that was sticking with strictly varsity sports.
That's correct.
Okay, so a motion to eliminate all the sports listed that were not varsity sports.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion. Wayne?
Can we, at the end of this, make a, just an announcement of what sports are going to be?
Yes.
And why there's no modified in JV, because that was for the participation, not because we're looking to do away with them.
Right,
Thank you.
we'll outline that. Any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor to modify the original motion? If not, roll call vote, Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Mrs. Little?
Yes.
Mr. Story?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce?
Yes.
Mrs. Freeman?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. District will participate in the low to moderate risk sports as well. You have a list of the sports, Lisa?
Yes, it's the next resolution. So we have varsity football, varsity girls field hockey, varsity girls volleyball, varsity girls soccer, varsity boys soccer, varsity boys and girls cross country, varsity girls tennis, and then we have football chain. Those are the fall sports. And that's based on the enrollment projections, or not the enrollment, the participation projections that Mr. Moyer shared with us, that I shared with the board.
And I also want to point out that it's in conformity with the recommendations of our school physician we met with earlier this evening, and gave us the guidance that we needed. I will entertain a motion under 7.3.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Discussion?
Mr. President, I think it's important to point out to the public too that we approved everything we could based on numbers, and even some of the sports that we approve don't quite have the numbers that would normally be indicated in a regular school year. So we know how important it is for the kids to have this, and the coaches to work with the kids outside the classroom. So I think we did our best on that.
We did our best also additionally just to make sure that the kids and the staff are going to be as safe as they can be. And we're going to follow all the guidance that's recommended to us by the DOH, Department of Health, and along with the CDC and our own school district that goes above and beyond that to enforce the safety protocols to try to keep us as safe as can from COVID-19. But it is important that the children have an opportunity to participate in sports to the extent that they can, to the extent that we can offer it. And the board worked very hard, and I'd like to thank my fellow board members for taking everything into consideration here and working extremely hard to come up with what was fair to the district and to the children and staff of this district as well. So thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries unanimous. 7.4, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved that the resignation of Jose Oquendo, buildings and grounds mechanic, be accepted for the purpose of retirement effective February 28, 2021, with regret.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
I think I asked this before. Will we be honoring our retirees at the end of the year?
I can't wait, just to have a celebration, not only our retirees, but also our teachers that have earned tenure over the last 2 years.
Yes.
I mean, we need to get back to hopefully, some celebration here.
It's I certainly wish Mr. Oquendo well in his retirement. It's going to be sad not to see him here on the grounds. He always had a smile on his face no matter where he was, and he was always a good person to talk to. So we wish him well in his retirement. Any further discussion?
Mr.
Mr.
President,
Oh, sorry.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yeah, Mr. Bruce.
I'd like to second those comments and just make a general comment that there's an end to an era occurring in the custodial staff in that department. And,
That's true.
It's it's sentimental to me. My father worked for the district for quite a few years, as well as my uncle, and Mr. Oquindo was one of that class, if I may use that term. So it's very sentimental. I wish Mr. Oquindo the best in his retirement as well.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries unanimous. Good luck, Mr. Oquendo. 7.5, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, be resolved that Joanne Gaeta's request for an unpaid leave of absence for the remainder of the 2021 school year be granted effective February 19, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Is this all for the discussion we had at our last meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
All those in favor? Opposed? No one. Motion carries unanimous. Upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, be it resolved that Gabriella Marcel be appointed uncertified substitute teacher at a rate of $95 per day work for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Do we have more substitutes that we're looking to add on the horizon?
Checking references on one other.
We're checking references next meeting.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. 7.7, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, be resolved the co-curricular personnel set forth on the attached list be approved at a contractual rate listed for the 2021 school year.
Move the list as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
I just want to make a comment. This is for the nurses to be on call during the practices and the games.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries unanimous. We'll move on. We have we earlier had discussed a change to our policy that had to be, we talked over with our school attorney, and you now see 8.1 on there. I'll read it. Whereas the Board of Education of the Ellenville Central School District conducts for the first reading for policy 74421, eligibility for participation in athletics and co-curricular activities, be it resolved that as permitted by policy 1410, the Board of Education of the Ellenville Central School District waives the second reading of the policy of 7421 and votes to adopt the new policy, which will be 3 weeks.
That'll, for the ineligibility policy, they'll have 3 weeks as opposed to additional weeks to become eligible if they're ineligible.
So Mr. Moyer is still here, so that will affect your department, Mr. Moyer. Mrs. Little.
This is only for this year with the way that the scheduling is going, correct? Isn't this just for the 20?
Maybe you should say.
Can we put that in there as
We'll
part
add
of
it on,
the,
yeah. This is a temporary anyway.
Correct.
You're right. It should be added as temporary. It's not a full change or
No, it's just
modification
for
to the
this.
policy.
So we'll have the language reflect that. This is a temporary, temporary change for the
21 school year.
Can we just make a motion to amend it?
Yeah.
yes,
I'll make a motion to amend it to include non-precedent setting just for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Temporary. Moved and seconded. Discussion?
I think we should make it clear to the public what exactly this is and to.
So, yeah, I agree. So what we have here, so everybody's out there, is the board discussed at length the eligibility policy. I'm going to have the superintendent explain what the eligibility policy would be in a normal year. So if she could go over that.
So at the end of a school year, if there's students that are ineligible in June, they fail 2 classes or more, there's an opportunity for students to start the season in the fall and be on a probationary status for up to 5 weeks. And because this isn't the beginning of the school year and we're well into the school year, although this is fall sports, the boards decided to make an exception to the 5 weeks and make it 3 weeks. So starting when the season starts tomorrow, for those students that are ineligible, they'll have 3 weeks to work through the process that's existing right now in the high school to become a student in good standing again. They'll have to be passing their classes, and the teachers will have to sign off, as they do in the regular process, that they are a student in good standing. They will have 3 weeks to do that. If they don't do that in 3 weeks, they will continue to be ineligible. If they do meet the criteria and the expectations that are set for them, then they will be able to continue to participate. And the exceptions being made because these are really unprecedented times, and everything was so up in the air on what would happen September, October, November. No one knew what was going to happen with any of this. So there's an exception that's being made just for this year only on modifying the ability for students to participate going into the fall season.
And this by no means is minimizing the academic responsibility of students. The board recognizes the academic requirements, but also had to balance that with the need of a shortened, a couple of different mitigating factors, including shortened seasons, as well as the pandemic and what has been going on in people's daily lives. With that, the board came to what I feel is a good compromise, and we're at 3 weeks with that. And they worked extremely hard to come up with this, but we still recognize that everybody has an academic responsibility to the district.
Mr. President, I think that if I may make a suggestion here, that rather than wait for this to come out in the minutes, that the district, the athletic director, the coaches, and the guidance counselors get this information out to students so that they know, because the time is shortly at hand, and we want to make sure the students understand what the
So,
responsibilities
Mr. Moore,
are.
I would ask that you get something out tomorrow to, the coaches and the staff.
And
And the
let's try to
students.
get this up on our website as well.
Yeah. You can even post it on our Facebook page with a summary of where we're going with sports for the fall. And
Thank
we'll-
you.
We'll be revisiting spring shortly.
Yes. Okay. No further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to budget resolution.
Motion to move 9-1,
Second.
9-1-9-2.
Moved 9192, motion and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries unanimous. On to education resolutions for this evening. 10.1, be resolved, attached list of IEPs be acknowledged as appropriate. There are 19.
Move the list is presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? No one. Motion carries. On to other. 11.1, shared transportation
Was that-
contract.
Excuse me, point of information, was that 10-1 and 10-2?
That was just 10-1.
No, it's 10-1. I'm sorry, 10-2
No,
volunteers.
I think it got modified. It got pushed down on the agenda when you added the eligibility resolution. So now the shared transportation is 11 point, on my count, on my.
but I don't think we.
10.2, we did not go
Oh,
over the
I'm sorry.
volunteers.
Right. So sorry.
Resolve the following volunteers be approved for the 2021 school year. Leah Gustin for varsity boys and girls soccer. Ryan Castro for varsity girls soccer.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
We didn't appoint assistants or JV coaches, and I'd have a concern with appointing volunteers when our own unit members are not getting these positions. It's just my point of view.
Any further discussion on it? All those in favor? Opposed? One. Motion carries unanimous. Or not unanimous, 7-1. 11.1.
Motion to move 11-1, 11-2, and 11-3.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And that will cover obviously our new grade reconfiguration in there as well. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Unanimous. Next meeting is March 9th, 2021. Mark your calendars. Is there anything anybody would like to see on the next agenda? Jody?
Seeing that we're going to possibly be consolidating our schools, can we revisit the bus runs to see if there's any way we can have any savings on those?
Done. You'll have that?
Our numbers
I
are-
won't have
our
it for the
numbers
next
have-
meeting.
No, that's fine. I didn't think something we should look at again. Our numbers are down.
Yes.
And if we're going K6, 7, 12, there may be runs that we can eliminate or even look at, I don't know if we'd ever revisit starting at one time. I don't know.
We'll reengage the transportation advisory services
Okay.
and have them, do an updated study for us on where they are, running the numbers and the routes to see
Yes,
what
please.
can be consolidated.
Will we get the special education information that was requested last
Yes.
meeting?
Yeah, we're still working on that. I had
Thank
mentioned
you.
it earlier, but we definitely will have that.
Again, March 9th, 2021. Anybody else for anything else on the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? We're adjourned.